Shane, how was Easter?
It was beautiful. What about yours?
It was good, man. It was good. I always get a little what do you call it? Sad, after the Easter, like after Lent is over,
Hmm.
because you spend a lot of time in church and going to mass and stuff like that, and there's quite a few people there. You feel like you're in communion with a lot of people, right?
Mhm.
And then it kind of, after Easter Sunday, it kind of fizzles out. People start kind of, you don't see as many people there. You don't feel that high moment that you uh, you know once had. But it's all good. But uh, the one thing I wanted to say, man, is I don't know if you guys, if this ever happens at your church, but I always feel like uh, the more I go, uh, there's always a couple of older people there, right? That
Mhm.
are kind of regulars at the church. Whether I don't know if they're sort of um, directors or members of the staff or something like that. But I always, I'm one that likes to sit in the back. I'm very kind of shy. Don't really, I'm reserved. I don't really like to be to be seen. So I'm always sitting in the back, and every time, man, it's like, oh, come sit in the front. Don't you want to come to the front? And I'm always like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And then there's like, no, I think you should come sit with us. So I know that way of passively aggressively saying, no, come sit, come join us.
Yeah, it's like yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you are, but I'm very I just like to do my thing and have my moment, where I'm not seen or heard. You know what I
Well,
mean?
so during COVID, that's the way that it was at church. At my church was it was wide open. You could go and sit anywhere, but
Right.
pretty much anymore, if you don't get there 30 minutes early,
Yeah.
you just have to take whatever you can get,
Okay.
it might be the middle seat that's like
Yeah.
that's in the middle of some pew somewhere, and you don't have any choice. And then
Right.
and if you don't get and that's if you get there like 20 or 30 minutes early. If you don't get there that early, then you may end up standing in the back and kneeling on the ground. Like that's
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it
So your
gets
so your so your church stays packed then.
oh, it does. Now the summertime, it'll be interesting to see what happens during the summer, because
Yeah.
a lot of older people leave to go back up north during the summer. So things
Okay.
may end up thinning out a little bit over the summer. But
Right.
it seems like since I don't know, it seems like since last Easter, it's been like this.
Wow. Wow. Well, amen to that, man. Hey,
Yeah, yeah, man. Well, like
that's
the pandemic kind of ended a little bit early for us in Florida.
right. 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 So you got, you know, still got some passionate, passionate churchgoers. That's
Yeah.
good, man. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, man, I wanted to just briefly talk about some news that's been going on uh past week or so. This week, past week. And I want to start off with this one. This is uh something happened. I want to say what I think this week, and this is from New York Post, but it's been circling through other news platforms. So it says feds charged two with running covert police station for China to chase down descendants in New York City. Um, and I'll just read the first sentence here, first paragraph. Two men were accused Monday of running a secret police station in Manhattan on behalf of the Chinese government, arrests that were part of a sweeping federal crackdown on Beijing's influence campaign in the U.S. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. You know, we're seeing seems like the Chinese have infiltrated the lowest levels of the arm of the state, and they're everywhere, right? Um, like I think what 2 days ago, uh,
Yeah.
we just find out that there's there's several other uh, police stations that have been set up throughout the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. In fact, that was another New York Post article, and they said that there were at least six other ones that they discovered.
Right, right, yeah. I'm
Well,
I don't know if
so what do you think about this?
man. I feel like I think it's for me honestly. I'm gonna say if it feels surreal, if it feels like it's kind of like a joke. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it can't be real. Or they must have known this, for a long time, and maybe they just decided to cover this story because or the government decides to do something about it now because there's a lot of attention on China and what's happening with China and Taiwan and all of that. But to me, um, I sort of feel like um, as much surveillance as we have in this country, which um, you know, all throughout the country and everything like that, it's hard for me to believe that they didn't know this before or didn't have some kind of information on this. I think they just decided to go for it this time, and it was just one of those good days to go after the CCP. That's not to say um, that I don't believe that China poses some sort of you know um, security risk, but um, it's hard to know whether or not we should we should consider China as a threat or not. Right there seems to be this um, sort of like two different two different arguments here. Where it's like China is seen as a real threat to the United States as a as a global threat, right? Everybody is should be concerned about the economic and political power that China is gaining, and then um, on the other side, it's kind of like, well, China is sort of our competition. We shouldn't be as forceful with China. Um, we shouldn't be as worried about China. Um, they're just competing, and they're doing it the right way. Maybe we should just recognize that we're sort of the losers um, towards the end or something like that. You know what I mean? There's kind of like this sort of like a neocon, um, you know, like a neocon interpretation that China is actually a real risk to the United States, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this other side that's kind of like, well, why should we really be worried about China when we have our own domestic problems here? Like, look at what we do, throughout the world, the kind of trouble we cause. So why should we really be, um, concerned about what China's doing, say with the Uyghurs or with Tibet or in Africa? You know what I mean? Or in Taiwan.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Like the first thing that you said about the United States, or that our that the U.S. government's ability to surveil everyone and everything at all times, especially within the country, it makes it really hard for me to believe too that they just suddenly learned this, that this is like that the fact that the Chinese were running influence operations, this is something brand new to them that they weren't aware of before. And I do think it is all too convenient that this news story just broke, along with those documents that got leaked from that army from that
Oh,
army guy.
yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
I forget what his name. He had kind of a weird name. I forget what his name was, but
Yeah,
he was like what, like 19 or 20 or something, and
right,
he leaked all those classified documents, and it's really weird that all those documents that he leaked are when you really dig into them, they're documents that make it very easy to argue the case that the United States should go to war with China.
right,
Um, and,
right,
and so it just seems like there's a whole constellation of little leaks happening here and happening there, and things that are
right,
being brought to the public's awareness now
right.
that 3 or 4 years ago would have been called xenophobic, you know.
Okay,
but
okay,
but now it's the mainstream,
right,
and now like the mainline neoconservative neoliberal view on what American foreign policy ought to be, you can already see they're starting to shift gears away from Ukraine, and they're
right,
starting to move full steam ahead toward Taiwan and China.
right.
um and just backing up a little bit, there's something that was called the Wolfowitz doctrine, and other people will call it the the oh, I forget exactly what the policy was called, but it was put out by an organization called the New American Century Project or something. It was a think tank out of DC, and
Mhm.
what they said was that the United States should have a doctrine that states any foreign competitor that looks like um it could displace the United States if down the road,
Mm,
militarily or economically, we need to take them down.
mm.
And my concern is that they're using the Ukraine thing to try to bleed Russia and to try to slap them down, because the future is energy. The future is always energy, and Russia's a captain of energy. They may not be a
Right,
captain of other things, but they're a captain of energy and nuclear weapons. Like that makes them a major peer competitor to us. And
right,
so they're trying to take them down, and then they're shifting gears away to China. And it seems like, and I'm not downplaying. I don't want the Chinese interfering in my country. I don't want any foreigners interfering in my country. But
right,
I also think that we need to have a broader conversation about the things that our country is doing to influence other countries' elections and cultures, in a way that those other that there's not really any consent from the public of those foreign countries, like us overthrowing their governments, us influencing their elections, like we just did in Nigeria.
right,
I think we need to have a conversation, a real conversation about what are the limits, what are the reasonable limits on or what reasonable limits should exist on one country's ability to influence the internal affairs of another country.
right, right. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I mean, you think about Taiwan in the Pacific, right? And how, you know, I mean, just, you have this small island, right? That is sort of the big, the big concern, for the United States, when it comes to China, right? And, but I feel like there's something more to that, in the sense that, I think the United States is more so worried about Chinese, a Chinese monopoly in the Pacific, right? Having being the stronger power, within the Pacific, right? So, you have all these sort of alliances between, I guess, what, the United States, Australia, and Japan, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're trying to sort of bring, other, like Southeast Asian countries in. Of course, there's Philippines, places like Malaysia, Singapore, and everything. But, um, you know, I, I, for me, I don't. I don't see why the United States has to be so ingrained in trying to, you know, take care of the affairs of, like Taiwan, right? Um, you know,
Yeah.
and secondly, and I think you spoke about this, right? Like, you know, China, you were talking about China not having any real resources. So I think this is something that people have known for like a very, since its history. Like China doesn't really have a lot of resources. So they've created some kind of deal or some kind of diplomatic relations with Russia, who actually has a lot of resources, right? So what do you think, like, that alliance is sort of um, creating? Like, what kind of sort of power shifts do you see happening there?
Well, it's for them, it's a match made in heaven,
Right.
and for
Yeah.
us, it's a match made in hell. Because the thing is, if the two of them are strategically aligned, then the two of them together can offer the rest of the world a lot of value. You
Wow.
know, a lot of
Yeah.
value that the United States can't offer. Really, at that point, the only value the United States can offer other people is not blowing them up.
Right.
And China and Russia together, they can offer people, a lot of energy resources and stuff, and they can use that because the thing that Russia and China, the thing they don't have combined is the ability to offer a lot of very complex high tech stuff. Like
Right.
China and Russia do not they don't have the ability to produce the higher end microprocessors that are necessary to operate vehicles, smartphones, computers, and stuff. Like
Mhm.
80% of those type of chips are
Mhm.
manufactured in Taiwan, and
Okay.
that's the reason that Taiwan is going to be that's going to be the point of contention in the Pacific. Um,
Wow.
and so at the end of the day, uh, it's going to be rough. And the problem is that type of manufacturing that takes place in Taiwan of the higher end chips and stuff, it can't really be done, or that can't really that type of an operation, that type of manufacturing, it can't just suddenly be launched overnight in another country. Like they're working on building out new factories and things that where they can start manufacturing those type of high end chips that are currently made in Taiwan, in like Arizona and New Mexico and stuff. But the problem is it takes, even speeding up the process, it takes at least like 5-7 years to get those operations up and going, just because of how elaborate and complex it is, and how you can't even allow one speck of dust to enter those manufacturing facilities.
Wow.
You know.
Mm. Yeah. All right. Well, moving on, man.
Yeah. Sorry.
Something a little
We
more.
just got off on a big tangent.
No, no, no. This is all good. This is all good. It's all news, bro. You
Yeah.
know. But moving on to something that happened a little earlier here. From the post millennial here, we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s registers to run for president as a Democrat. Um, so Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is reportedly going to run for president, the son of late Senator Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of Robert John F. Kennedy, registered his presidential campaign with the Federal Election Commission. Shane, you're a Kennedy,
Yes.
Clan Kennedy, right?
Man, so
So,
I'll tell you this. I'm thrilled as can be. That
yeah.
so if Robert Kennedy Jr. can pull off the Democratic nomination, which I think is kind of a long shot, um, and if Donald Trump can pull off the Republican nomination, I'll be happy as can be. And the reason is not because I think that Robert Kennedy Jr. is a man of pure unadulterated ethics. I mean, the guys at Kennedy, they were, they were whiskey runners and womanizers and everything, and then you've got Donald Trump, who's not the most ethical guy in the world either. So I mean, I'm not following either one of them as like a personality cult or anything, but the thing I
Right.
love about both of them is they both have a personal vendetta against the military and corporate establishment that is really that's really running the country now. They've been running the country for a very long time, but I don't think they've ever been more powerful than they are now. And
Right.
they're really, and really they're corporate fascists is what they are,
Right.
and and I'm not necessarily even saying that Robert Kennedy Jr. is totally ideologically opposed to centralized power, or that Donald Trump is. It's just that they both have a personal vendetta against the establishment, because they ran Donald Trump out of office. They impeached him twice over nothing. They did the whole Russiagate thing, and it's all turning out now that stuff was all fake. And then Robert Kennedy Jr., they killed his dad and they killed his uncle.
Right.
So the thing is, like, these two guys, a Democrat and Republican, each one of them, they have their own personal vendetta against these entrenched corporate fascists that run all the alphabet agencies in the federal government, and that run the military industrial complex, that run the pharmaceutical establishment and everything. And I'll be happy as can be with either one of them. I'd be happy to see Robert Kennedy Jr., but I might be a little bit biased there. There are a lot of things I don't agree with him on, like Robert Kennedy Jr.'s pro-choice and stuff like that. I don't agree with him on those things, but I'd be willing to compromise to get him in so that he can clean house in DC, because that needs to happen.
You're with the whole drain swamp thing, right?
What?
I said you're with the whole drain the swamp thing, right?
Amen, man.
Yeah. Right. So we gotta. I liken Robert Kennedy Jr.'s running for president is kind of like I said the other day, it's kind of like Hamlet. He's looking for total revenge. And hopefully this won't be a Hamlet is supposed to be a tragedy. I think a tragedy. I think it's what it is. But hopefully this won't be the same scenario. But yeah, we need a little bit of we need some people rough around around the edges. I think this time around. Of course, Trump is no easygoing guy. You know what I mean? I don't know him personally, but just his persona, he seemed like the like he's going to be that easy to let go of his willingness to be authoritative, right? And and another thing, I wonder, I asked this question, like, what do you think Robert Kennedy Jr.'s opinion on the Ukraine war is? Do you know anything?
Yeah, so I watched his 2-hour campaign launch speech a couple of days ago, and what Robert Kennedy Jr. said was that he wants for us to put an end to the war. He wants for us to broker peace. And what he was saying was that he wants to see the United States, instead of the United States having a reputation for being a war pig in the world, he wants the United States to have a reputation for being a peace broker. For being somebody that you call in as a fair third party to help settle conflicts. And the United States has been pushing, like, the civil war in Ethiopia. The United States has been one of the biggest cheerleaders in the world for that. Yeah, and all over the world, we're constantly cheering on war. And Robert, and now I will say this. I think Robert Kennedy Jr.'s stance on foreign policy is superior to that of Donald Trump's, because Donald Trump said, peace through strength, which Robert Kennedy Jr. believes. And Donald Trump said, I don't want for us to start any new wars. But the thing Donald Trump never really directly articulated was wanting to, like, close military bases around the world and bring the troops home in unnecessary places. And Robert Kennedy Jr. brought up in his speech, he sounded in that part, he sounded a lot like Ron Paul in 2008. He said we operate 800 military bases around the world, and it's about time that, and what his point was is that we can't take care of Americans that are suffering here at home, who are living in poverty, who don't have health care, who are starving. We can't take care of them and finance our world and continue financing our world empire.
Right.
That we need to bring the troops home, keep the few necessary bases that we need to keep or whatever, but
Right.
bring the troops home, save a bunch of money. And what
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy Jr. is proposing now, this is where I disagree with Robert Kennedy Jr. is he wants to like have universal health care and stuff like that. But I'll tell you this, Shannon, is if my choice is the federal government, blowing a whole bunch of money, and they can either blow a bunch of money on a bunch of social programs, or they can blow it all on war. I'd rather them blow it all on social programs. I'd rather for some of the excess to go to poor people in the United States, instead of for all
Right.
this excess to go to all these gun and ammo and weapons makers.
Right. Right. And that's an interesting point you made about brokering peace, right? Because in the news, I think this is maybe wasn't that long ago. I want to say 2 weeks ago or something like that, maybe three. That China, and this is where I say again, it kind of makes you question the sort of narrative that kind of double narrative where China is sort of like the eye of Sauron versus like China being, our biggest competitor, is that China was able to broker some kind of a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Right. These are two countries that have had enmity with each other for ages, right?
Yes.
I'll just say that, right? We'll just say that, man. This is probably seated in something like probably going all the way back to the 7th, 8th century, or maybe not that far, but quite a long time, maybe the medieval ages, but it just goes to show you that, like, and maybe they do have an ulterior motive. You know what I mean? I mean, you can say the same thing about China being in Africa, right? The fact that they're helping to, build up various countries' infrastructure, and everything, and so maybe there is some ulterior motive. Maybe they have some, this thing where it's kind of like, yeah, I'll help you guys broker peace, or we'll help you, economically, as long as you sort of, as long as you sort of become I guess, a client state to us,
Yeah.
or something like that, right? I mean, China in its history, used to have a what they called tributary states,
Mm-hmm.
right? And foremost was like I think Japan, Korea, and Vietnam, but
Mm-hmm.
there were other tributary
And the Philippines
states.
at different points in history were tributary
Right,
were tributary states and stuff, right?
right, right. I think so. Yeah. I mean, a lot of different countries along in Southeast Asia, were tributary states. So, there is this question of whether China is trying to become the great dragon, or what China calls itself, the center nation,
Yeah.
once again, the center nation. And so, I understand that. I get that. But then, again, there's that question of like, is that just sort of like um, American propaganda, right? That we just have this sort of everything that's about China is sort of bad, but at the same time, it's like, most of what is manufactured, that we use comes from China. Like they make all of our most of our products. So I mean, do we really have that much of hatred for them. But I digress. That's you know,
Well, let me say one thing. I think that I don't think China successfully brokering the peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia. I don't think that's necessarily a tribute to the superior ability for China to broker peace in the world. I think what that really is, I think it's a referendum on how low America, or on how poor America's reputation has become.
okay,
You know,
yeah,
because our defense architecture in the Middle East was based around there being this tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran. You know,
right, right,
that is completely it has completely thrown our entire architecture out the window for the Middle
right,
East now. And you know what? Hey, they're at peace.
yeah,
I'm very happy about that. But the thing is that this was really a referendum on America's reputation and influence.
right,
You know, I don't think it says a whole lot about China still. I think it says more about the United States and just how out of touch and out of sync we are with the rest of the world.
right, right. Yeah, that's that's a good point. It's kind of like a self-reflection. Like we have to self-reflect on our what do you call it? Our public image, or our the way we are portraying ourselves to the rest of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, you know what? I got another one for
But
you, and I'll leave it here because um but I was going to share this with you. Here we go. This is from the European Conservative. Turkish Interior Minister, whole world hates U.S. Europe is U.S. bond. He says here, Turkish Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu, a well-known critic of Washington, who previously accused it of orchestrating the 2016 coup d'état attempt against President Tayyip Erdogan, has leveled exceptionally harsh criticism against the collective West, saying, among other things, that the entire world hates the United States, while suggesting that Europe is little more than a pawn of the U.S. So that, I mean, that
I'll
goes,
be honest with you, Shannon. I don't entirely disagree. I don't really disagree with what he said. You know, it is definitely inflammatory,
right,
but the thing is, like, you know, the rest of the world, they especially the global South, they view the United States as being a big bully,
right,
and the only collection of countries that are really within the U.S. sphere of influence and kind of locked in it are Europe,
right.
are the European countries, and we kind of locked that down by blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. You know,
But you know what though? You know what? That brings us to another recent comment, and this is from the French president Emmanuel Macron,
oh yeah,
who said um, who said that France is no longer. I'm paraphrasing, basically saying that France, and I don't know if he said France or Europe, but something to that effect. He said that we will no longer be sort of the we're not going to align ourselves with the United States on every single thing. You know what I mean? And he said that in response, I think, to how the U.S.'s position on China and Taiwan,
yeah.
right? In which he was basically saying, we're not necessarily going to agree with you on this, right? And then then of course he also just went to China, and had a meeting with Xi Jinping. So it's sort of you sort of question whether the United States is sort of on its own, in a sense, whether we whether we're sort of isolating ourselves politically, um, and what that might mean for our future, right?
You know that you saying that reminds me of something that Ron Paul used to always say whenever he was still in Congress. Because people, and for people who may not know much about Ron Paul, he was a congressman that used to always say that we need to bring the troops home. We need to stop encouraging all these wars around the world and stop fighting all these wars around the world. Stop being the world's policeman and start looking at taking care of ourselves. And if we're going to act abroad, we should be looking to fairly trade with other countries, not using force. If it's a good deal for both of us, we agree on it. If not, then no. And then the other thing, genuinely broker peace in the world, because a more peaceful world is a better world for everybody. And people would look back at him and they would snarl and they would call him an isolationist. And what Ron Paul used to always say to those people in Congress was, he would say, I'm not the isolationist.
Right.
I want peace with other countries. I want the wars to stop, and I want to trade with other countries. I want to culturally exchange with other countries.
Right.
I want for us to cooperate in this world together, us still remaining our own individual countries and governing ourselves, but I want for us to work together. And what Ron Paul would say is that those other people that would call him an isolationist, they were actually isolationists, because the world that they were crafting in their lust for war and trying to push NATO on the rest of the world and trying to force our values on other countries, trying to ram democracy down the throats of Afghanis and stuff like that. That what that does medium and long term is it isolates those people from us, because it makes those populations of people hate us.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because they don't stand to gain anything from it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I'll ask you this last question. Do you think that, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, man, because I'll just ask the question. Do you think that diplomacy is dead? Right. When I was younger, when I was in high school and stuff, I really liked the idea of diplomacy, being a diplomat, right? Like the United Nations, countries working together to, foster peace throughout the world, right? Like, just a lot of the stuff that was happening, say, in the early 1990s with, a lot of the coups and wars that you saw in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia and stuff like that. I really admired, people like Kofi Annan. Although now I look back and I'm like, was he really that good of a, what do you call a Secretary General, the United Nations?
We could all be better, And Kofi was looking out for his son, and his son made all that money on the crooked trading in the oil for food program with Iraq and stuff. But hey, he did good things too. Like, he did crooked stuff. There are a lot of people in power, Shannon, though, that they just do crooked shit and they don't ever do anything good. So, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to do
that. You got passionate there, bro. But it's okay. It's okay. All right, man. Well, I just want to leave with this last thing because and we can I'll just mention it and then we can go into talking about this maybe next week or after. But that is the two members of the Tennessee House. What's their names? Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, where they had been expelled from the state house of Tennessee, right? And then they were put back into the house. Sorry, my domestic politics is not my strong suit, but I'm trying to explain. I'm
pretty spotty with it too, man.
They were, okay. So they were put back into the house, but that is actually not my real topic of discussion here that I want to go into next week. But that is what these two sort of represent in terms of young people in education, right? And what what they might be, where they might be getting that sort of I guess zeal for political revolution, you know, political rebellion, um, this you know, social justice movement, you know, and where all that might be coming from, who's spearheading that, and you know, and why is it that we're seeing, say, of we're seeing more of those types coming out of college than we are, say, entrepreneurs, you know, people who, you know, who are thinkers, you know, engineers. And when I say engineers, I don't mean like people who want to do like mechanical engineering or work for Amazon. I mean like people who actually want to create things, you know, people who want to engage in science. So I want to leave it there, and then go and talk about that
Yeah.
Next week if we can.
Sure.
Because I think that you brought up something very interesting in regards to that. So um, we'll just hold off on that because I think that'll be
Okay.
an interesting topic. Yeah,
Well,
man.
let's do it next week.
That sounds good, bro. I'm always down, man. All right, brother. Good
All
talking
right.
to you, man.
Oh, you too, brother.